What is that about the car? I missed that.
You were late. You were parking your car, I believe.
That's good, Rakesh.
I was saying, Mandy, that as long as he's not skydiving, we are in good shape.
Is that okay,
okay,
Shobha?
okay.
Yeah, that's okay. And we are live now, please. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful.
Okay.
Well, nothing starting with the elephant joke, no? When some Americans asked in India, well, you ride elephants, so don't you have a parking problem? You know, so they said, yeah, we have a parking problem. That's why we switched to cars. So anyway.
That's hilarious.
Joke, no? When Americans asked in India, well, you ride elephants, so don't you have a parking problem? You know, they said, yeah, we have a parking problem. That's why we switched to cars. So anyway.
Do we have anybody joining us? We are all at 3.
We are live.
Okay.
You can see people getting in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Anjuna, over to you.
yeah.
Should I
maybe we
start?
can give a minute or something. Or in the meantime, we have good to see Loveleen, and then
Hi.
hello.
Hey, Loveleen.
Yeah.
I can see you clear now.
Okay, thank you. I was trying to link from my phone and it wasn't as good. This is my laptop now, so.
Yeah.
Okay. Rakesh, you're looking like a fighter pilot or something.
Pilot. Yeah, I'm in command.
Absolutely. There you go.
It's very visible.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we are growing participants. We're hitting about 70 right now. So
7-0. Okay, I can't see that. But then should we start now, that considering it's 70 participants?
yeah, I think it's 3 minutes over. So why don't you get the show rolling?
Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, friends, colleagues from industry. Happy Janmashtami. Thank you for tuning into this very important discussion that comes your way today from the Responsible Tourism Society of India. I'm Anjuna Dheer, your host for the day, and I promise the next 2 hours will change you in many little ways. August 12 is the World Elephant Day. The elephant is loved, revered, respected by people and cultures around the world. Today, this magnificent, majestic, sensitive animal is struggling for not only its survival, but also for the respect that it so rightly deserves. With the elephant god our main deity, riding elephants are major tourist attraction and activity. With Lord Krishna exhorting us to action, karma, we at RTSY feel that it's time that the industry begins being responsible for elephants in tourism. As you're all aware, Responsible Tourism Society of India is a non-profit organization with an aim to promote responsible and sustainable practices in the tourism industry. We feel it's our collective responsibility to look after ourselves, our industry, and our environment. Before I invite Honorary President RTSY, Mr. Rakesh Mathur, a few housekeeping rules. Kindly mute yourself. Please park your questions in Q&A and chat. After the initial presentation, we hope to have your active participation through questions and discussion section. I now invite Mr. Rakesh Mathur, Honorary President and Founding Member RTSY, to join me in welcoming you all and taking this discussion forward. But a little bit about Mr. Mathur. Mr. Mathur has a 46+ year long relationship with tourism industry. So he's seen it all. A Shimla boy, an Oberoi hotel product. He grew in the industry to become executive director of IHG Hotels for South and West Asia. His tryst and passion with India's heritage, culture, environment started in 2001. He took over as president of RTC Welcome Heritage Hotels. Driven by his passion to revive and promote his country's built and natural heritage, he was involved in converting and reviving more than 60 heritage and nature-based properties into productive assets and experiential hotels. Mr. Mathur co-founded the Ecotourism Society of India, which is now called as the Responsible Tourism Society of India, to spread awareness about sustainable tourism practices, and is currently its honorary president. Highly recognized and awarded, the causes closest to Mr. Mathur's heart are safe and honorable tourism and taking such concepts to the children at school level. Mr. Mathur, over to you.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. And happy Janmashtami to everybody. It's a very strange coincidence, but all our webinars seem to be on very auspicious days. The last one we organized was on the happy occasion of Eid. And today it's Janmashtami. So as they say, there is a good hand over our heads, which is guiding us. I'll just give you a small brief about the Responsible Tourism Society of India before I hand over to my colleague and the founding president of the Responsible Tourism Society, Mandeep Soin, to take us into this discussion. We were formed in the year 2008, and it was at the behest of the Ministry of Tourism when we realized that a lot of our destinations, which were in sensitive rural areas, were being vandalized by tourists and tourism service providers equally, especially in the unorganized sector. And domestic tourism had started picking up in big numbers and tourism was booming. Hotels were growing at a huge pace. And we saw that there was very little control very little control over the activities of both the tourists and the service providers. So at the then ministry, we approached the minister who said that, yes, this is a very important thing. And she opined, it was Mrs. Ambika Soni at that time, that we should make this an industry initiative. So all of us who founded this Ecotourism Society of India are people who are busy in our own professions, people like Jose Dominique, people like Mandeep, myself, etc. But we decided that we will give our time to the industry as a payback to the industry. And since then, we have grown. We have done a lot of workshops. We have done several projects. We have done several conferences, and we continue to look ahead in doing new things and new initiatives. We have launched what is called the Responsible Traveler campaign. We did a study at the Chambal to record the wildlife of the Chambal Ghatis, which was a very interesting campaign in itself, where we met dacoits who we tried to transform into guides. So we've done very interesting projects since then. I just want to share with you that this is not an association. The Responsible Tourism Society of India is a society. It does not represent the interest of any segment of the tourism community. It is a payback to the society. It's a kind of corporate social responsibility activity that we are doing, and anybody and everybody who supports us is seen to be doing the same without any expectations in return. I won't say more because there's a lot to say on the society itself, but I will straight away ask Mr. Mandeep Soin, who's been our founding president and who really has done a lot of work in this area, himself being a very well-known adventure tour operator, his company Ibex. I'll ask him to take on and straight away get into the subject of what we are discussing today. Over to you, Mandeep. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mathur. Let me introduce Mr. Mandeep Singh Soin in a few words. Mandeep is an explorer, mountaineer, environmentalist, and an adventure travel and ecotourism professional. He's also the founder and managing director of the award-winning adventure and luxury travel company Ibex Expeditions. He's also the founding president of the Responsible Tourism Society of India, and in his expeditions to all the 7 continents, he's undertaken many environmental projects ranging from the Arctic to Antarctic, Andamans, Nagaland to the Chambal. He's on board of International Adventure Travel Conservation Fund and a jury member of the WWF India and Pata Bagh Mitra Awards. He's the only Indian to receive the Ness Award from the Royal Geographical Society UK and the Citation of Merit from the Explorers Club USA. Mr. Soin was also awarded the Tenzing Norgay National Adventure Award for Lifetime Achievement by the President of India. Over to you, Mr. Mandeep Singh Soin.
Mandy.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I have to put a small disclaimer that I'm actually sitting in my mountain home, so I have a poor connectivity. Can I be heard?
Yes, Mandy, we can hear you clear. We can't see you though.
Okay. Yeah. I'm a little, okay. I'm scared of putting on my video, but there it is for a few minutes, and then I'll go on. Yeah, I have poor connectivity. I sit in the hills, but thank you very much for that. And I think Rakesh has already walked us through. What I really need to do is introduce our star panelists today with Karthik, who heads Wildlife SOS, and then ask him to make a presentation, because I think what we are all tackling today for the first and the most sort of formal engagement that we are trying to have within our tourism industry is literally talking about the elephant in the room, as it were, which is what is the engagement of tourism with the elephants in terms of, you know, the way they are captured, the way they are domesticated, and all that will be unfolded by Karthik. Karthik I met when he was on my panel at a CII discussion, and I was very impressed with the work they were doing. And not only that, it kind of made me introspect about, you know, what our engagement should be in the near future. And that's how I brought it up to Rakesh and my colleagues in the RTSOI. And today we are very happy that we are able to engage and talk about this. And Karthik, it's a delight to have you. You've been a conservationist since 1995 when you founded the Wildlife SOS, and you've done some amazing stuff which will come out. You've rescued 600 dancing bears and rehabilitated them and the communities. You've rehabilitated over 30 elephants with the Wildlife SOS, and you also run a very interesting anti-poaching unit with, you know, your organization, and then you have all these medical facilities and so on. So I think it's fascinating to be able to hear what you and your organization are doing, and how we can actually craft a way forward in this whole aspect of how we are basically going to try and reduce the capture of or exterminate the capture of wild elephants to be domesticated. So there's a lot of info and a lot of interesting debate. We have some more special panelists who will give us their view based on how tourism pressures are there for elephant usage and so on. So now I will request Karthik to really take it forward, because at your center, I know that a lot of tourists have gone. We ourselves as a company have sent you students, and they've had an amazing experience. So Karthik, it's all yours, and roll us through your wonderful presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mandeep. It was a pleasure hearing all those kind words. I think you flatter me too much. Thank you. It's been a pleasure to meet you as well as Rakesh, Anjuna, Shobha, Mohan, all of these people and your entire team at the RTSY. I think it's been great engaging with all of you, and thank you so much for having me on this today. And I look forward to sharing the facts that we know and we've learned over the last 30 years. So I'll quickly share my screen, and I hope it all works out. Let me know if you can see the screen, a presentation.
Yes, Karthik, we can see the screen. Yeah.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. So today's talk that I'm going to give, and I've been told I only have 20 minutes, so I'm starting my timer now, and I hope I don't get something thrown at me for running over, is about responsible tourism and elephants. And as we move forward, I'd like to just start by saying, wild animals have been, subjected to exhibition in tourism, whether we like it or not, for a long, long time. And in the past, it used to be viewed as cultural. It's cultural to see, local people using animals, etc. But, India has had a Wildlife Protection Act in 1972 that makes the capture, possession, training, and use of wild animals illegal. So I think it's very wonderful initiative of the Responsible Tourism Society of India to get ahead of the game and make sure that any animal that's involved in tourism is handled responsibly. And I think it is the responsibility of the tourism industry collectively to ensure that animals are treated in a responsible manner. So I'll just quickly walk through over here. In India especially, foreign tourists would of course see dancing bears quite a bit in the past, but today you can still see elephants, snakes, monkeys, etc., still very much in the tourism sector. Now, I'm going to, before I venture into talking about, the aspect of tourism, I'm going to give you a little bit of background on Wildlife SOS and what our effort has been since 1995 to promote responsible tourism and to ensure that these issues are resolved. The reason you have a bear here is because this bear inspired us to start and create Wildlife SOS. So my founder, Geeta Seshamani, and I created this institution in 1995 when we saw a site on the streets of India where bears were used for performances on the streets, and foreign tourists were seeing that. Now this bear, I'd like to draw your attention, this species is called a sloth bear. It's only found in India. It's not found anywhere else in the world. We have one subspecies in Sri Lanka, but that's it. And of course, there's a small sprinkling in Nepal. But this species is not found anywhere else in the world. India has 4 species of bears out of the 8 that exist around the world. So it's a really great honor that we have such a wealth of biodiversity in India. Now, this was a sight that shook us from within. An endangered bear which receives as much protection as a tiger in our country. Technically, holding, capturing, or possession of a live bear or its body parts could result in 7 years of imprisonment. It's a non-bailable, non-compoundable offense. But when Wildlife SOS, our team in Wildlife SOS saw this, we started trying to find out and uncover what was going on. And this was back in the day in 1995 when we saw this. And we found out through about 30 months of research that this was a 400-year-old practice. And the Kalandar community, or the gypsies, entered India from Persia to entertain the Mughal emperors back in the day. And sadly, it was initially for their harem who couldn't leave the ramparts of their fort. Even to this day, there are ancient tracks from the Kalandar villages and their settlements to the fort gates from behind. And it became a tourist entertainment for street side tourism. And I've seen busloads of foreign tourists stop and look very confused because they see a bear in the middle of a street near the Taj Mahal or near Jaipur, etc. They'd be shocked. And of course, they didn't know any better because they thought it was culturally and legally allowed and permitted and acceptable in India. So they did take photos, and of course, it would give a spike in the income of these people. But sadly, the truth behind this was, although the community used to say that, they'd just be born in our backyards and that's how we produce many more bears, the truth was that every single bear that was used on the streets across India was taken from the wild. What you see here is an image of a baby bear that was rescued from poachers, but about 200 to 250 cubs were being poached every year from the forest. The mother bears would be killed by the poaching gangs, and then these cubs would then reach undercover markets, in various states across India: Orissa, Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Karnataka, Jharkhand, Telangana, etc. And then they would be subject to a training process, which involved using a heavy metal rod to smash out their teeth, and then a red hot iron poker to make a hole in their muzzle or their face, through which a coarse rope would be put through. And then this bear would then be trained to perform. So as it jumped up and down, when the rope was pulled, the pain would make it hop, but it looked like the bear was dancing. So that's how the term bear dancing came into existence. But sadly, these people needed better alternatives. It was illegal. And so a lot of people thought that these communities needed to be punished. But we looked at it very differently. We said, why not teach them a better way of supporting themselves instead of depending on wildlife? And so what you see in this slide is a photo of Amin with his bear before he surrendered it to the forest department. The forest department then handed over the bear to us, and Wildlife SOS established wildlife rescue centers. The biggest one is in Agra, which is 165 acres and has about 200 bears at the moment. So these bears would be surrendered to us, and then we would then work with the Amin, the Kalandar, and his family to set up bank accounts, give them seed funds. And here you can see he got himself an auto rickshaw with our support, and that gave him 600% more income and a stable income than the bear. The bear's income was very little, and it was spiked only during tourist seasons. Otherwise, he would have to beg from street to street, village to village. But now he could stay in one place and make sure his family was cared for much better, and he could live with dignity without having to run from the law. But we also had to work extensively. Our work with the Kalandar community started with the women because they seemed to understand the problem much more. When we would enter the villages, they would attack us, initially thinking that we were going to take away their livelihoods. So the women understood. We started training them, empowering them with skill training like carpet weaving, tailoring, embroidery, and started buying their products. Through them, we were able to start sending the children to school because there was complete illiteracy in that community. They didn't know any better. This is all they had done, and this is all their forefathers had done. So they wanted to continue that. So the photo you see here is of children on the right, which are all going to school, and Wildlife SOS pays for their school books, their fees, their uniforms, etc. And we also help the community fight social evils like child marriage, which was a big problem, and girls would get married off at the age of 11 and 12. So we tackle that efficiently with their support. And we've sent over 7,600 children to school so far. And now, education is a very powerful tool. An educated person will not want to beg on the streets with an animal. They now know that the future ahead of them is bright and the sky is the limit. So there are youngsters in the community who now are in college. They are about to pursue medical school and engineering. So we are very proud of this achievement. A few weeks ago, we celebrated the 10-year anniversary of No Dancing Bears across India, because Wildlife SOS worked for 17 long years with this community, and we rescued every single bear from across the country, 628 in total. And we established 4 rescue centers in collaboration with the state governments. So we work in partnership with the government in every state, wherever we do. And we've been able to help the community as well. So the milestones we achieved just with this one effort that we took on to try and make India look better in the eyes of foreign visitors and dignitaries was to eradicate the entire practice of dancing bears. We brought the last dancing bear in on 18th of December 2009. But after that, our anti-poaching unit continues to sporadically rescue bears from the Indo-Nepal border when they try to sneak in. We also feel really proud, because we're very patriotic, of course. We've been able to restore the dignity to India for foreign visitors, because a lot of foreign visitors used to write complaints to the government of India saying that, this is the country of the Mahatma Gandhi, and how can you treat wild animals this way? When they would see those bears, and they would refuse, they would say that we wouldn't come back to India, we wouldn't visit India, we wouldn't buy Indian products. And so it really upset us. And we got 7 kilograms of letters back then from the Honorable Minister of Environment and Forest asking us to help intervene in this. We've rescued and rehabilitated, like I said, 628 bears. We've been able to give alternative livelihood for 3,000 families. And we've been able to bring in women empowerment, community upliftment, healthcare, and education into this community. And the thing that makes me really happy to share with all of you is that 40% of the workforce in Wildlife SOS is from these communities, these indigenous communities who used to exploit animals, but today have learned compassion and kindness and are now taking pride in the work that they do with us. Very lightly, I'll touch on couple of other things that are involved in tourism. Snake charming. The facts behind snake charming are that snakes are not born in captivity. Every snake you see with a snake charmer is captured from the wild. They have to be defanged. The photo that you see on the left is a cobra with mouth infection. You can see the white pus between the lips. That's because they gouge out the venom gland, and venom is nothing but concentrated protein that is used for digestion by the snake, and they smash out the fangs using cutting pliers. That is why these snakes have a very short life once they get infected. The photo on the right you see is a rat snake with a hugely inflamed and infected mouth, and you can see the stitches that have been put through the snake where the mouth itself is stitched. This is to ensure that the snake charmer does not get bitten and can stay safe. Of course, snakes are attractive as long as they can lift their hood up and look attractive for tourists or visitors. But once they're too weak to perform, they're then skinned alive, and then they are turned into wallets and purses and things like that. So we've got to remember that these snakes are smashed and skinned alive before they're even killed sometimes. Monkeys is another thing that we often see performing on the streets for tourists and stuff like that. We have to remember that monkeys are wild animals again. They have to be captured from the wild. And an adult monkey will never learn to perform that easily. It's much easier for people to capture a baby monkey. It's separated from its mother, and that's how they train them to perform. And you can, you must understand that these are one step away from human beings, right? We are all Homo sapiens, but monkeys are primates, and we are primates really at the base of it. So these animals feel emotion and pain and suffering just like us. But, because tourists sometimes don't realize what they are helping to incentivize, they accidentally tip these people or incentivize such capturing. If more people want to use monkeys to earn money, then obviously the capturing of baby monkeys from the wild has to increase. Now we'll move on to elephants. And, elephants have been really important to Indian culture, mythology, and our tradition, from time immemorial. And of course, we all believe in, Lord Ganesha. But if you look at the photo on the left, what you see is that child getting a blessing from the elephant's trunk. Look carefully to the man sitting right next to the elephant's right foot. He has in his hand an ankush or a bullhook, and that is touching the elephant. And that piercing of the ankush on the elephant is what creates the negative reinforcement required to make a wild elephant behave like a captive one. So I'm just going to play some facts over here in front of all of you. We've got to understand that elephants are all wild. They are wild animals. They're taken from the forest, and that's where they belong. They do not belong in cities and in places where there's hard flooring. These are animals that use their soft footpads in the jungle, and they're animals of the deep jungle. We've also got to understand that about 95% of the wild Asian elephant population in India has gone. About 10 decades ago, we had 1 million elephants. So you can imagine, in 100 years, we've lost a substantial number. And today, the population currently stands at about 25 to 27,000 elephants in the wild. So that's the kind of loss we've got. And if it goes on at this pace, we could lose all our elephants in 5 to 10 years easily. Now, here's the ugly part. There's no way that captive elephants can have a high percentage of pregnancy because of the amount of work they have to do constantly. The pregnancy gestation is almost 2 years for a baby to be born. And therefore, it's much easier and much more lucrative for traffickers and poachers to capture wild elephant calves from the forest and then train them so that they can be used in tourism and other places. This is a photo of an elephant calf that's been captured from the wild. I'm going to share with you a couple of very short videos so you can see what the capture process looks like. And I would urge you to not look away or close your eyes, because it's important for you to understand the facts. I mean, it's our responsibility collectively to ensure that we take responsibility for the elephants used in tourism.
मण्डलाय अनन्ताय नागराजाय नमो नमः। मणिभ्रात्मना सहस्रविधृत विश्वम् भरामण्डलाय अनन्ताय नागराजाय नमो नमः।
I'm sorry to make all of you watch that, but it was important for you to understand what the fact is and the truth behind elephant capturing. And then how does a wild elephant become trained for tourist rides? Why will a wild animal allow people to ride on its back? Because there's a training process. And the photo that you see on the left is a training kraal, which some of these are images from Thailand. So the same process is used across South Asia and Southeast Asia, where they use negative reinforcement to ensure that a wild animal's spirit is broken, so the wild elephant will then give up the ghost and say, okay, fine, you can do what you want with me. And then the constant fear and intimidation and pain is used all through its life to make sure that it can perform the tasks required, which are unnatural for an elephant, like walk in a city, walk tourists up and down a fort, or perform in a temple or a circus. And then this is the kind of life that usually awaits a captive elephant. It will then behave like an animal in a city and move between traffic and things like that. This is another image of bull elephants stacked up right next to each other in a procession in Kerala, a temple procession. You can imagine that these are bull elephants packed with testosterone. Bull elephants in the wild do not stay with each other. They're pushed out by their herd and by the matriarch because they can be very unpredictable and and are quite dangerous. So what is preventing these elephants from running amok and rampaging this crowd that's ahead of them? Thousands of people could be injured and killed. It's only three things. That's the person sitting on top of the elephant with a bullhook or an ankush. The fact that the front legs and the hind legs of these elephants are hobbled with metal spikes, and a person standing right next to it, next to its shoulder, with a spear poking into its ear or behind the ear, and one person behind the elephant, also making sure the elephant understands that if it tried anything like running amok or doing anything mischievous, then it would, of course, receive a very painful retort. And that's the only thing that's preventing these elephants from going crazy, because you can imagine the trauma that they would have if you're tied up and made to stand like this for hours and hours and hours, which is completely unnatural again. This is a photo sent by foreign tourists who witness this in, I think, Jaipur in the Amer Fort, where one of the tourists got dropped off by the elephant. So the owner and his assistants got together and beat the hell out of the elephant. So they actually sent in a complaint to the tourism ministry and to various other organizations. So this is the visual impact that we are giving people. This is a sight that foreign tourists get to see of a kind, compassionate India. So the tools of torture for these elephants, these are the sophisticated tools that are used to handle and manage elephants: spiked anklets, a heavy bullhook or an ankush, and a spear. Now, the reason Wildlife SOS has been involved with elephants is because of Government of India. The state governments involve us in helping them assess situations, as also to rescue elephants that are in distress, which are held in illegal captivity, or in situations where the people who hold the elephants can't, are unable to care for them any longer. And so I'll give you a quick behind the scenes look of what it involves for us to go and rescue an elephant. It's not as easy as we think it is. So this is an elephant in need. This is an elephant called Suraj. He was tied up in a temple in Maharashtra. The government of Maharashtra contacted us, and we were asked to go in and try and do an assessment. You see our veterinarian doing an assessment over here. This elephant had been tied up like this for about 45 years or so. And you can also see the left ear of the elephant is missing in this case. So we had to, of course, step in and work with the community, with the Mahout, to help transport this elephant to the Elephant Care and Conservation Center in Mathura, where he currently lives and resides. But just to tell you that this is the kind of problems that we face when we are trying to rescue and relocate elephants. So this is, of course, another elephant that we are trying to see. Let me orient you to this photograph. It's actually a video. This video is taken from inside the elephant ambulance, where our team is standing, and there's a huge mob of about 5,000 people trying to stop the elephant from being sent. And we had about 200 people from the forest department, the police, etc., who were there to ensure that the law could be enforced. You can see that, the mob is not happy. So a lot of people don't understand what the truth is behind elephants and how these elephants suffer in unnatural conditions. Of course, with the help of the forest department and the police, the elephant was loaded on the truck. And of course, because of the amount of risk involved, the government sent about 50 or 60 vehicles and about 200 officers to escort the elephant out of there. This is the elephant ambulance, which is being escorted out of that district by a huge police force. There's anti-riot squad vehicles also behind this. But this is to give you an idea of the amount of coordination, logistic support that's required to rescue one elephant. Of course, once we get into the vehicle and then start providing treatment to the elephant right away. No journey is complete without making sure that we can incentivize the journey for the elephant by giving him a lot of treats. We stop occasionally to make sure that the truck is cleaned out and the elephant gets fresh fodder throughout the journey. Once the elephant reaches the Elephant Conservation and Care Center, you can see the peace and tranquility over here compared to the mob situation where he was loaded. You can also see that there's no need for our team to do any negative reinforcement over here. No bull hooks, no ankush, no chains. We're able to just walk the elephant out of the ambulance into its enclosure. And then he reaches the Wildlife SOS Elephant Hospital, which is the only hospital currently in India, which is about 12,000 square feet. The elephants get an opportunity to get treatment over here. We have x-rays, ultrasound, and modern medical equipment to be able to treat elephants over here. And of course, this is something that I think is a fun thing. It's a jacuzzi. It's the world's largest jacuzzi, in my opinion. It's a hydrotherapy pool where the elephants can get in and relax and get a chance to have their tired and exhausted muscles and get treatment for osteoarthritis and things like that over here with 21 high-speed jets. Of course, this is Gajraj elephant who was rescued, who was currently having a dust bath and enjoying himself. Now, this is natural behavior for an elephant, and I think a lot of people enjoy watching this much more than watching an elephant do unnatural things. Now, a lot of people ask me, does rescuing a captive elephant help all of Indian elephants? It does, and I'll explain how. And I might be answering some of the questions that you might already be thinking of asking or putting into the chat box here. But I hope some of these answers help you get clarity. Now, the facts about the illegal trading and trafficking of Indian elephants. Captive elephants are taken from the wild. It's illegal. The Forest Department across several states is trying to tackle it. But as you know, that's the nature of crime. Crime enforcement authorities are constantly working to tackle it, and criminals find new ways constantly to do something. Most elephants across India, a large majority of them are owned illegally in remote areas, and the Forest Department is trying to enforce the law and change that. Law enforcement is needed, of course, to end the illegal elephant trafficking and trade, but very often the limitation is that the forest departments don't have facilities to keep those elephants, or their facilities are already full, and therefore there is a urgent need for rescue centers and camps to be established across India to be able to support the forest department to enforce the law. And enforcing the laws is really the only way that will help to deter elephant trafficking. I'd like to share a couple of images with you of elephants that have been rescued by the Forest Department, handed over to Wildlife SOS, and the current life. So here's a before and after photo of Suraj. Here's a before and after photo of Bola elephant. He was hit by a truck in the Delhi area. And this is Raju, who was handed over to us by the Uttar Pradesh Forest Department. Again, you can imagine how he looked and the current life that he has at the elephant camp in Mathura. So the goals for Wildlife SOS are really to promote responsible tourism in India by making sure we can educate and create awareness amongst the people and tourist operators as well as tourists themselves about what the truth is and how they can do the right thing by navigating information correctly. Assist the government enforcement agencies to help curb illegal trafficking of wildlife. And we also work very diligently to train elephant care staff, managers and mahouts across India to improve elephant care. So one of the things that we've started, it's a campaign called Refuse to Ride, where the website refusetoride.org is just a resource website which we encourage people to visit. It's refusetoride.org, so you can go there and learn and empower yourself with information and knowledge about what the truth is behind elephant riding. How are elephants, which are wild animals, able to give tourists a ride, and you can still get off alive and you're not killed or crushed by these elephants. So this is something that I would like to share with all of you, and feel free to go to this website and learn about it and ask questions if you want. Also, just a quick last slide is that Wildlife SOS has been working in India for over 30 years, and recently there's been a 6-episode series on National Geographic Wild about the work that we do to help wild animals in India and help protect Indian wildlife. It's called India's Jungle Heroes, and it comes on National Geographic occasionally, but it's also premiering on Disney Hotstar. So feel free to go ahead and watch it if you'd like. I think you'll really find it interesting. It shows a lot of challenges that we face and our team does on a day-to-day basis. Thank you. That was the presentation. I apologize for going 4 minutes over time. I hope everybody could hear that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. That was wonderful, Karthik. So I think luckily we are in a virtual setting, so there's no way I could throw a tomato for that extra 4 minutes. So you're safe. So yeah, it's actually over to you. We should have a few, question and answers between you, me, and Rakesh, and then we can throw it open to our special panelists who we've invited for their comments, and then we can finally open it out to our Q&A, which is, I noticed, popping up in the box. So yeah, thank you for that. And over to you. Yeah. Karthik, can you hear me?
Yeah, you are come back just now.
I can hear you. Mandeep, thank you again for this opportunity to be able to speak with all of you and communicate with you. I remember you started, in your early days, you led expeditions and stuff about elephants. I'd love to hear your thoughts about that.
Well, I mean, it's funny, but the disclaimer is that in 1990, I launched India's first elephant expedition because there had never been an elephant expedition, and being in the sort of adventure space and travel and tourism and so on, it was actually a collaborative venture with the government of Kerala, where you showed the picture of the elephant march. So the idea was that they would use the march to publicize the elephant festival, and at the same time, we did a 101-kilometer expedition on elephant back, although we didn't take howdahs. We were riding bareback in explorer fashion, but we had no clue. We had no clue what goes at the back of getting these elephants, who we thought were such wonderful animals. We were emoting with them. Our mahouts were caring for them so wonderfully. They were taken from the jungle. So our perspective for elephants, and indeed many other situations where, whether it's camel riding or whatever, was so different. So, I mean, there's a marked change in our consciousness over a period of time as we started to realize, and the stories that we saw, the maltreatment that we saw, that today we've come to a point where, thanks to good efforts like yours, I think people are starting to wake up. And honestly, if anything, this was really to be an alarm call for the tourism industry. We have been in the sort of business of tourism. We hear it from our overseas partners, but sometimes people take care, sometimes they don't. And honestly, it started in a small way with the Amber Fort coming into focus, where there was such maltreatment, there was people getting crushed by the elephants and so on. So I think there's been a sea change, and I'm glad that we are addressing it, and we are hoping that we can form a strategy to go forward. So it's all looking positive. And I know we can get very emotional, as we all should when we look at all these. Yet I think there is a need for us to be wise about the strategy we craft for the short term and long term. Because obviously there are loads and loads of elephants. You need to make sure that they are, tackled humanely. And the long-term goal should be possibly not to have wild elephants being captured, because if tourism is fueling the demand at some level, then we need to address that. Of course, there are many other nuances, but I'll leave maybe Rakesh to take that on, because some of us have been having some intense discussions. So that's what I thought I would put on the table. Thank you.
Okay, Mandy, am I heard clearly?
Yes.
So, Karthik, thank you so much for taking us through this journey. And like many in the audience, as I was reading the chat, I too had a lump in my throat. Many years ago, I don't remember, I went to one of these wildlife sanctuaries, and there was a small room and there was a signage outside which said, if you want to see the most dangerous animal in the world, please come inside. And with that expectation of seeing something beyond the tiger, I went in, and what I saw was a figure of myself in a mirror. And I think nothing could be more explicit after watching all this, that how inhumane we as a human species are. Also, many years ago, when I was a youngster and we were under training, I once asked a question to my guru that, when we have a problem, we are at a crossroads and we don't know what to do. What should we do? How should we decide? And the answer was very simple. Do what your heart tells you. So, Karthik, anybody with a heart will definitely be with you on this journey. And there is no way that we, as the Responsible Tourism Society of India, are ever going to encourage or even sort of, we are with you in this movement to completely stop and ban the catching of wild animals, the torturing of wild animals under the so-called guise of training them, the taming them or training them. I think it's the most inhuman thing that can be done. And so I think I will just say that we are with you in this journey. I saw a question which said that there has been elephants, etc., have been so much part of our culture. How are we going to bring about the change? There was one gentleman who asked this question on the chat. I think the answer is very simple. It's a big challenge in our country, but yet we have to take all the stakeholders on board. We have to work along with people. It is nothing that can be worked out overnight, but we will definitely create a situation where all stakeholders come on board and participate in this entire movement to bring about this change. Another question was, how will you change consumer behavior? I think that's the least important thing, because consumer behavior is only changeable if there is a choice. We will not give a choice to the consumer to demand an elephant when there is none available. So I think that should be the kind of passion with which we get into this task. How we go about it, I'll come to that later. But I think, I come from Rajasthan, and I just want to say that wild animals have been used for sports, for entertainment, for cultural and religious reasons, for economic reasons. And my very own elder brother, when he got married, and I'm talking of several decades ago, the barat went, he was sitting on an elephant, not on a horse. Thankfully, I didn't do that. But, it just reminds me of how integral this is to our cultural and social life. But we need to bring about a change. There's no doubt about it. With this, I think I'll give it back to Karthik to say whatever he wants to say, or to Anjuna. And I'll come in later about what action we propose to take towards the end of the discussion. Thank you.
Karthik, I have a question. As elephants have been part of our culture for so long. So have we been cruel throughout, is this the only way it has always been like, and it's just that we didn't know about it, or there were other, more humane ways, and we've just, left those behind?
I think, in the past, Anjuna, there were perhaps a stronger bond between the elephant and its owner. And it was almost worshipped. The mahout or the owner would worship the elephant, treat it with a lot of respect, and look at the elephant like, it gave him everything it deserved. They have a father-son relationship in some cases. But I think that bond has fractured over the years and over the decades, where it's all become very commercialized now. And the elephant is seen as a crane or a JCB or a tool that has to be used. So, very often, in many cases, the elephant mahout changes hands constantly. So sometimes, for example, if we take the example of maybe a commercial place, a tourism spot like Jaipur, it's likely that the mahout who goes up with the elephant on the fort with his tourists might not be the one coming back. He'll hand over the elephant to another mahout. And there are 2 or 3 mahouts who change elephants almost every day. So which means that there is a lot of uncertainty. The elephant doesn't have the time, the chance, or the people don't have the patience to bond with the elephant any longer. And these are elephants never forget, and they hold this in mind. And every time a new mahout comes to handle the elephant, it would take him too long to use patience, positive reinforcement, and bonding to get to know the elephant and let the elephant know that he's going to manage it. So I think negative reinforcement is used extensively to shorten that duration. Some of the elephants that we've rescued, we found that they've had up to 27 owners in a span of maybe 10 years. So you can imagine what that would feel like if we were an animal that was being traded. And unfortunately, they are the largest mammal on planet Earth. I mean, land mammal, and they have a huge brain. So they are extremely intelligent creatures. They feel emotions like us, and they can think. They're very clever, and obviously they see what's going on right in front of them. So I think, yes, that bond is no longer there currently, and under the current circumstances that we have, it might be too difficult to reverse things and go back in time, although it would be great if that could happen. But I think with the current scenario, we've got to try and see what the future could be. And there are humane alternatives available which can easily address issues like livelihoods and and tourism and stuff like that. I think if this is handled the right way, and I'm sure people like Mohan, who are also, I think, on this meeting with us today, would be happy to share examples of how they've come on board full-time, TravelScope and Rare India. And I think they can give examples of how there is no change in revenue from tourists, because tourists don't seem to want this, and they will always do the right thing once they have information and they have awareness. And the people, the stakeholders on the ground, will find there are easy ways to find alternative livelihoods for them. And that's the reason I showed you the example of a 400-year-old practice that we were able to tackle in less than 20 years, which was this problem of the bears. Of course, the elephant problem is certainly elephantine in comparison to the bear problem, but that's why we are all here together, so we can solve it in a way that India looks better. People can continue to see elephants and enjoy that without harming livelihoods across the board. I might take the liberty, with your permission, Anjuna, to request Mohan to maybe say a few words about his experience and what he'd like to share. Is that okay?
Karthik, we've got a plan here.
Oh, sorry. I apologize.
Yeah, no, Mohan's definitely on the Q&A roster. But I thought we'll start off first by inviting Latika Nath, who's actually just been appointed an ambassador of the Responsible Tourism Society of India. And then we'll get Mohan, and then we'll get Loveleen, who are the 3 special people who have something to say based on their experiences. So let me introduce Latika. who may not be a stranger to many in this sort of wildlife space. She's a wildlife conservationist, an author, great photographer, and has been a wildlife lodge owner as well. But none of that really matters to me. What matters to me is that she is our ambassador, and she's the first one. So what she's also done some amazing work on elephants, on tigers, got a DPhil from Oxford. And because of her experience with human and elephant wildlife conflict under a fellowship that she got with the WII, I thought she would be a good person to very quickly, in about 3-4 minutes, just tell us what her thoughts are on how we craft our future steps. So if you're there, Latika, all ready
Hi,
to
Mandy. Yes.
please jump on. Yeah.
I hope you can hear me. I don't have a superb connection at the moment. Keep getting these signs saying it's not very good. So if you don't hear me, just let me know. Thank you for inviting me today. I'm just really attached to elephants. I've been very fortunate that I've had many elephants as my companions while growing up. And even when I was doing my master's and my doctoral work, there was elephants who were my friends. I used to hang out with them, and I've spent very many good moments with elephants in the jungles of India. However, yes, absolutely. There are elephants in India that are treated absolutely abysmally. There is no way that we can, excuse this. There is no way that we can accept this. And it is absolutely essential for us as an industry to take a stand and say that elephants, and not just elephants, any animals in the tourism industry have to be treated humanely. That's vital. However, we have seen and even discussed with Karthik, with other experts, that some elephants, when they're treated humanely and better ways are used to communicate with them, form bonds that are unbreakable bonds with their caregivers. And I would prefer to call them caregivers rather than owners, because the relationship is like that. And these bonds exist throughout the life of the elephant, often carrying on even beyond the life of the caregiver. So it's an incredible bond and something that we must acknowledge. And this is something that Asiatic elephants are known for. It's always been known that Asiatic elephants and humans can work together beautifully, unlike the African elephants who have never been used in this fashion. So acknowledging that and understanding that it is not easy to take care of a few thousand elephants if we pick them up and take them away from their present caregivers, we need to find a solution. And I think it's fantastic that we're joining hands as the Responsible Tourism Society of India with somebody like Wildlife SOS and starting a dialogue with everyone, including the government, on what we can do to make things better. One of the things that we've been talking about is the Refuse to Ride campaign. And I think if we know that there are elephants that are not treated properly, we are absolutely warranted to refuse to ride elephants in situations like that. And these are elephants in crowded city places, in processions, places where they're not being looked after, they're not being given the food that they should be getting, they're not being given the care that they should be getting. I think one of the things that I would also like to point out is that I feel that we need to also try and see if we can actually get insurances for these animals. Mandeep, Rakesh, maybe this is an idea that you can think of as well. If we have like a certification program, then if there is a certified animal, can we actually help them get insurances for medical treatment, for help, for assistance? These are all issues that you can think about and how we can do it. Can we also make for instance, a public database of all elephants in captivity in the country? I know it'll take a little while to do, but maybe this is something that we could do. So you can find out online if somebody is taking you somewhere, you know what the elephants are, you know the history, you know whether they've been abused, and you can take then a responsible decision on how you want to meet that elephant, whether you want to ride it or whether you just want to meet it or whether you want to assist in its upkeep and caregiving. So it then becomes an informed decision. And I think informed decision making is really, really important. So another area that we maybe want to work on is doing little videos and really going viral on the social media. And I think all of us here have access to enough people across the world to make one campaign and make it go viral. And basically, the single message that we give is responsible tourism cares for elephants in the tourism industry.
Wonderful.
And that's really the message that we want to be giving out. So I think these are all issues that I would really like to see happening, and I hope Karthik will help us with doing some of these. Karthik, are these possible? The database, the social media campaign. Do you think we can work with you on everything that you do and then add these to the list as well?
Absolutely, Latika. I look forward to a wonderful and very proactive, collaborative partnership with the Responsible Tourism Society of India. And I think everyone I've met from there, and you and I have known each other for a long time. And I think the idea is that we can come forward together, maybe have a working group, and come up with plans by which we can move forward in a logical, practical way to bring solutions that are good for the country, good for people, and good for animals. That's all we want, responsibility all around. And I think as long as we all share, both Wildlife SOS, RTSY, and every member on RTSY, we all share the same goal, I see only a positive response and a positive result that we can all achieve together.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Karthik. Thank you, Latika. That's wonderful. And all your suggestions are obviously taken on board. And at the end, I think when Rakesh comes in again, he'll tell us about the task force that has already been constituted by him of people from RTSOI and Wildlife SOS. So I'll let him do that. But I think if I can just lightheartedly say that from Karthik, I'm delighted, something to do with his name. I might change it to Karthiking, because you're already picking away, so we are Karthiking away together. So wonderful. Now I have the great joy and pleasure of inviting Mohan, who's a member of our travel fraternity, and he runs an amazing organization called Travel Scope, which is all about experiential journeys, tailor-made holidays, and so on. And he himself was a commerce background graduate who came into tourism, worked with his brother who ran another great enterprise, and kind of got involved in the whole wildlife and nature appreciation. And he had some interactions with Karthik as well as Wildlife SOS, and he's been to their centers, seen their work. And it would be nice for him to explain on how he's navigated as a tourism company vis-a-vis the demand that might be coming for elephant riding. So Mohan, over to you. If you can, in the next 3-4 minutes, please cap it for us on what is your experience and journey been on this elephant front. Thank you.
Thank you, Mandy. Thank you, Karthik, and thank you, everyone. First of all, I want to put 2 disclaimers. I'm not an expert like many other panelists here, and I stand guilty as charged for being, one of the people who have stopped tourist buses en route and had our tourists watch the bears dance. So, but I would say that the years of traveling and meeting people like Karthik and many others who met along the way have I would say, inspired me to change the way I looked at things. So there are three words that I think are important: impact, influence, and inspiration. Impact of all positive things, also negative things that you see when you travel. The influence that it makes on you. Again, it could be positive or it could be indifferent as well. And eventually it should inspire you to do something. So I'd say that that's been in a nutshell of my journey in travel. And this has been a big school for me where I've learned everything. As far as this subject goes, it's a vast subject. Of course, today is the International Elephant Day, and we are actually discussing elephants. But I think there is a lot more that one needs to understand. And for me, it's been, I would say, I've been lucky, fortunate to have met people like Karthik. We have also discussed. I have also argued with him, and finally understood, the point that he makes about using animals in tourism. It's not an easy decision for anyone to take. There are a lot of arguments and counter arguments. Animals have been part of culture. They've been used, in festivals and in pageantry and all those kind of things. And what will happen to these animals if they are not used? There are a lot of, like I said, arguments and counter arguments. But I think the main point I'd like to make is that you should go with a singular thought, and that singular thought is that at some point in time you have to make that decision that, okay, I am now stopping this, and then you work around it. One of the things that Karthik would always tell me is that when you have a client asking for something like that, you should make positive reinforcements about what happens, and I think that has worked. I was almost on the verge of losing a $50,000 booking. I'll be very honest. And the client insisted on an elephant ride at Amer Fort. Now, you got to work around these things. It's a client. Obviously, I understand that we can't refuse a client, directly like that. But you got to work around that subject. In fact, we as a company took a conscious decision of stopping the elephant rides at Amer Fort as early as 2005, when one of our industry colleagues lost his life to I would say the behavior of an elephant. And we don't blame the elephant, but that's the kind of impact it makes. And then there are all kinds of inquiries that happen after that, and a lot of things kind of emerge. One of the things I learned that, half the elephants in Amer are blind. They just walk up and down by instinct, So when you hear these things, it makes an impact, like I said. So I had to work around it, and I had to very politely tell the client that, listen, I'm sorry, but we are not going to be able to provide this service to you. And if at all you want, and although this is something that, I don't think we should say, if at all you want, then you take that service on your own and pay directly. But even I didn't want to do that as well, but it came to a point where I had to tell them. But then once the tour got over, I asked my trip leader, I said, did they even ask you about it? They said no, they didn't even ask me. We went to the Amer Fort. We just took the van all the way up and did the sightseeing of the fort and came down. So yeah, there are ways and means to work around it. And I would recommend everyone to make a visit to the Wildlife SOS, definitely. I think that'll kind of bring a lot of things into perspective. And like I said, it's not just about elephants, it's of course elephants, bears, and many other animals. The positive work they're doing. Do definitely watch the Heroes of the Jungle 6-part series. I think you will binge watch it. I can tell you that, guaranteed. You'll binge watch it. You will not waste a second, moving from the place you are.
Okay, thanks very much.
Yeah. Sorry, I think I
sorry.
exceeded my time.
I'll really need to cut in. I know you're getting very emotional, very nicely, but thank you for being so candid. And I think that was a very good example of what it means to really believe in your 3 eyes. And I love the fact that you focus on 3 eyes. As we always say, that our 3rd eye needs to open. So maybe in those 3 eyes, your 3rd eye is open, and compliments to you for that. Let me very quickly now get on to speak to Loveleen Sagar, who, unlike Mohan, comes from, we are all boutique and smaller operators, but Loveleen represents one of the largest travel companies in the country, whose MD, it so happens, is also on our governing council. But she herself is the senior vice president, and although came from a curating background, dived into travel and does an enormous amount in terms of destination knowledge, creation of destination knowledge, and so on. And I think it would be very nice to have your insight as well on what it takes for a company like yours, like Mohan. Do you find yourself at crossroads, and how do you actually solve the problem, and what do you think in the immediate future you might want to do, which could obviously be a great signal for the rest of the travel companies? Because as I think Mohan rightly puts it, ultimately it's a case of making your choices and walking that path. So where are you in that path at the moment, if you can be candid with us? Thank you.
Thank you, Mandeep, for giving me this opportunity, and all the panelists. I think the first step is to sensitize and educate all the stakeholders, whether it is your own colleagues internally, or your clients, or your tour operators. That is the first step. So when this Jaipur incident happened, I think that was a wake-up call for most tour operators to rethink on animals being used for tourism, especially elephants. And that got us thinking and talking, because we are a very thinking lot. And we were into debates. We were arguing amongst ourselves as to, within the company, we had a group of people who were saying let's just completely ban it, but business was at stake. So yes, we were at crossroads at that point of time. So what we decided, that we will start sensitizing our tour operators. And if the demand stops from there, then we don't have to cater to it. So as salespeople, as part of, as salespeople, we started doing that. We started sensitizing our stakeholders that this is not a good thing. And we would subtly refuse that. If somebody was asking for a ride at Amer Fort, we would say, why don't you take the Jeep instead? And it's, we would tell them a little story about it. And 90% of the time, people would listen to us and agree to it. So slowly, we got some of the major tour operators to actually ban elephant rides. People in the UK, people in France, Germany, and US, those are the main big markets for India. And I'm happy to say that a lot of good tour operators from those countries actually banned elephant rides. So that was a very positive step. But having said that, there is still demand. You would have an odd incentive asking you for an elephant polo, and thank God that got banned some years ago. But yes, we have been on the verge of losing business, like Mohan said, when it came to things like that. So yes, it is not easy, but I think the biggest thing is for us to understand what it is and sensitize and educate everybody involved, all the stakeholders. So we've had the opportunity of inviting Karthik to our office actually for a Knowledge Wednesday, where he spoke in depth about the rescue center near Mathura when it had just opened. And that, I think, was a brilliant move where all our staff and people actually selling holidays understood. So I go back to my point of educating and sensitizing people.
Thank you. Thank you. That's great, Loveleen, and it was very encouraging to hear that not only are companies in India doing this, but also abroad. And I have seen campaigns by large companies like Intrepid and many countries that they operate should not be doing, elephant riding. Now we come to, this aspect of, I just wanted to announce that before we kind of moved on to the Q&A section, which Anjana will now quickly handle until Rakesh then closes the meeting. And he also mentions our wonderful MOU, which is going to be announced today with the Wildlife SOS. And that is that the RTSOI has been planning to, in league with the Ministry of Tourism, to launch something called the Responsible Traveler Guideline. So the idea is to make people, whether they are Indians or foreigners, to be a little more responsible. So we have a set of guidelines that are internationally accepted, and we are also going, hopefully, that extra mile to develop an app, which will also have lots of features like you can take photographs of any wrong things that you see, and it'll be GPS located, etc., etc. And the last thing we want to do, which is again a thought which has just come to me for Karthik, when Latika was talking about identifying the right elephants, and of course we might have a certification process, that in the app we can actually build in an aspect of all the elephants that can be actually pointed at, and you recognize which elephant it is. Just like you have a plant recognition app or a flower recognition app, and then you will get to know whether that's a legally certified and a humanely dealt with elephant or not. So there are lots of thoughts, I'm sure, that will come up, but the responsible traveler aspect should itself maintain that we do not support this activity, and we'll give them the backdrop. We'll give links to Wildlife SOS and the work they do and so on. So I think it's a very exciting time for us to explore all of these options. So with all that, I think I'll give it back to Anjana to take a few questions before we run out of time completely, and then on to Rakesh to close the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mandy. Quite a few questions, but most of them revolve under 3 or 4 crucial areas. And so here's your chance, Karthik. Everybody wants to know that, okay, we do not support rides of elephants in tourist places. What happens to the team which is associated with the elephant, the mahots, elephants go to your center probably, but then what about the people who are employed in the tourism industry with the elephants?
Thanks, Anjana. Well, first of all, I'd like to say that, in most cases, what happens is, and from the research that we've done over the last couple of decades, the owners are very often not dependent on these elephants for their livelihood. So it's, there's a small clique or almost like a cartel who manage the elephants. For example, I think, the over 100 elephants in Jaipur are owned by about 18 people, something like that. I don't have the facts right here at this moment, but it's a small number. And yes, the mahouts who work on a daily wage basis, they certainly depend on that tourism for livelihood. And like I said, even during my presentation, it is possible to easily find a middle path where livelihoods are not affected. And you saw the work that we did with the bears. It is that success that we did with 3,000 families that enabled us to take on the work with the bears, because with the elephants, it was a much bigger challenge working with hundreds of elephants. And yes, we cannot rescue every single elephant and bring it to our center. We are not in the business of hoarding elephants at all. All we are trying to do is the Wildlife SOS Elephant Conservation and Care Center, or an elephant camp, as we call it, is simply a breathing, living model that we can show people that, okay, this can happen. It's not impossible. It's not a foreign country. It's right here in India. It's in Mathura, 40 minutes from the Taj Mahal. Stop and look at it and see that this is not rocket science. If we can do it, anybody can do it. And in fact, in the past, organized workshops with the Rajasthan Forest Department, and most of the owners and many of the mahouts from the Jaipur, Hatigaon and the elephant village, as well as the elephant ride industry, we encouraged them to come and see everything, and we shared it because we have nothing to hide. It's transparent, and yes, there are problems that turning around will take time. And yes, there will be resistance like we had. I still recall days when Geeta and I went to these Kalandar villages near Sikandra and Fatehpur Sikri and in Tonk near Jaipur. And we were chased out with people, using swords and spears, etc., saying they are here to take away our livelihoods. But we just went back and went back. It will take persistence. And it's a challenge that, RTSOI and Wildlife SOS have. It's not going to be easy. I'm not saying that, but it is possible. It's certainly not an impossible task. So we can find a middle path. Livelihoods can be ensured. Humane treatment can be achieved. Tourism will boom. That I can guarantee you, because all I have seen is people being more generous, wanting to enjoy their experience much more and market it much more. It'll be much more marketable when there's no cruelty, no abuse, and no torture involved. I hope I've answered your questions.
Yes.
Right, it's very interesting. So the other question is actually associated, a sub-question of this. If no elephants to ride at these tourist places, how do we get to enjoy and experience elephants? So you've partially answered, but what I understand is that it's possible to go to your places and probably incorporate
places, Anjana. There are so many places across India where elephants can be enjoyed by just sitting and watching them. I mean, there are places in every state, I would think, there are places that can be curated. Even in Hatigaon, we tried very hard working with the architects involved, with the government department. They invited us. We went there for several meetings to meet the architects who were trying to design it. And we tried to explain to them, why don't you create a mechanism by which people can go there and enjoy watching the elephants in the pool, foraging, enclosures, etc. But I think maybe they had too much resistance, or, there were some obstacles obviously for them and they couldn't implement it. But, we can always go back to it. One thing that I've learned from the bears and my last 30 years of doing this is that we just can't afford to say, we give up. We just have to go back. If we fall down, we fail, we stand up, we dust ourselves off and go on. We can't afford that, even if we fall on our face, we stand up and we do it again. We'll find a solution. There's no problem about that at all. I mean, I know we in India are used to doing jugaad solutions all through our lives, and I'm sure we'll find one. So it's possible to have experiences which do not involve riding or painting, but yet you can give the best experience to foreign tourists who come here wanting to see elephants, and have them enjoy that experience, which will make it much more marketable, much more valuable, and unique for them to take back with them.
Another question deals with Karthik. Once the elephants, we stop riding elephants, the elephants are saved, and you also would have a limited capacity of taking care of the elephants. So where do rest of them go?
Like I explained,
break the system.
Like I explained, Anjana, Wildlife SOS is not in the business of collecting elephants. That's not our goal. We are not holding elephants. As we speak on this webinar, I have a team of veterinarians who've gone down to Udaipur because we got a call from the Forest Department of Rajasthan. An elephant had fallen down and collapsed, an elephant called Sonkali in Udaipur, and she'd been in a very bad state. They wanted us to move her to our elephant hospital in Mathura, but we realized that she was in no state to move. So we sent all the medical equipment in a vehicle last night, and they reached there early this morning. They started treatments. And I don't know, I hope she survives, but she looked like she was in very bad shape. So our goal is to try and help and make a difference, and also spread awareness and knowledge. And if we've got some learnings, we would be happy to share that, so that can be emulated in other places. So Wildlife SOS Center is not the only one in India. We hope that every state has not one but many. And not only will elephants have a better humane treatment over there, but it will also give opportunity for responsible tourism to happen. You know, a lot of elephant camps, I think in Karnataka and Kerala, etc., offer this already, where people can just sit and watch elephants, you know, playing and doing their thing. I think some places in Thailand also offer opportunities like that, where tourism dollars are helping support elephant care, elephant conservation, and elephant welfare, while sending a valuable educational message to the tourists who come there. They take away a good experience, they enjoy it, it's more marketable, as well as they go away learning about elephants. And you know, as all of us are seeing, more and more people want valuable experiences to bond with their family members and take away with them, and not just some, you know, touristy thing. They want to go away from the regular tourist thing, and they want experiences to enjoy. And I think, you know, that's the direction we're all heading towards as well. We don't intend to take every elephant and rescue every elephant. It's not possible and not financially sustainable. It costs us, you know, 60,000 rupees per elephant per month. That's about 2,000 rupees a day to look after an elephant. So obviously, you know, that's not what we are in the deal for. What we want to do is try and set an example and show the way forward for the country to follow.
Thank you, Karthik. The comment which is there and which struck me topmost in my mind is, we admire elephants in part because they demonstrate what we consider the finest human traits: empathy, self-awareness, and social intelligence. They are large animals, and what they definitely deserve is our respect. But the way we treat them displays the worst of human behavior. And this is also visible in, you know, our festivals, our temple festivals in South India, where the elephants are showcased, and an animal with such a sharp hearing is subjected to those hours of cymbals banging loudly. So yes, there's misbehavior on humans' part at multiple levels. How do we change this culture? This question is open to everybody. Karthik, you, Mr. Mathur, Mandy, how do we change this culture?
I'd like to just
According to
start
me,
and say that, I think education is the way forward. We've got to educate everybody. I think, RTSY has already taken the lead and is flagging ahead with this. But because if every member on RTSY and eventually every travel company across India starts educating their clients and their own staff about this, have a link to this on their website, I think that will already let people understand what the truth is. And I think knowledge is power. Once people know that this is the reality and this is how wild elephants are, and could we subject them to that? And I think once people start understanding that, it will be much easier to implement change on the ground. And I think that's the way forward. That's my comment.
Yep, all in agreement. No issues. Long way ahead, but I think it's got to be done and use a lot of different strategies. And I think this whole sensitization, whether it's the traveler or whether it's getting it part of the school curriculums under the whole environment and so on, many things that RTSY is already mulling and trying to push, I think it'll all be fitting in for the bigger picture. Thank you.
Karthik, can I say something? Can I take this chance? Since I'm in Udaipur and we talked about this elephant yesterday and I told you that it needs help, there's a huge community of friends and well-wishers for elephants here in Udaipur. So message me separately and tell me how we can help you with this elephant, and let this be our step forward on World Elephant Day today. Let's start right here, right now.
Thank you so much, Anjuna. That's very sweet of you. But I'm so sorry to announce this on this webinar, but I just got a message that that the elephant just passed away. So I'm so sorry, but this is an example of what happens to elephants when they are used on streets for begging and weddings and things like that. This is probably an elephant that has come from Amer Fort, and her feet, I've seen photos of her feet, and literally, I mean, the soft pad underneath is cracked into a million bits.
Yeah, that's why I told you yesterday.
Yes, Latika, we dispatched a team, yesterday itself. But yeah, unfortunately, that's the reality of what happens to elephants when this continues. But I'm so sorry to break this news to you
This is
at this
sad,
stage.
yeah.
But Anjuna, we'll have a conversation about what else can be done over there. There are some more elephants, I think, in that region that need help. Thank
It
you.
was me. It was me. Not
Thank you, Karthik. May I invite Mr. Mathur to now
talking to
talk
you.
about our MOU and other things.
Yeah, I think all good things have to come to an end. I will just start by saying that the capture, the torture under the guise of taming and training has to come to a stop. The capture of wild animals. And as Latika so rightly put it, the stop the abuse and start caring. I think very well said, and that is what. And at the end of the day, I did see some questions where people were pointing about the use of animals for religious purposes. I think let's keep religion away from this. This is about being a good human being and not about being a Hindu or a Muslim or a Christian or whatever. It's about just being a human being. So we, after looking at all this that was happening, and after a very good interaction we had with Karthik, we decided that the best way to go about it was to work along with all the stakeholders in the tourism community. And as far as the cultural aspect of the use of elephants, either in sports or in entertainment or in religious purposes or cultural purposes, we spoke to the Indian Heritage Hotels community, which is very, very ably led by Maharaja Gat Singh Ji of Jodhpur. Now, Maharaja Gat Singh Ji is the president of the Indian Heritage Hotel Association. And we felt that if we worked very closely with them, we would be able to set up, we would be able to put in motion a mechanism which would address all these issues that we have discussed. So we've decided to form a little task force represented by Wildlife SOS, by RTSOI, and by the Indian Heritage Hotel Association to sit together and to address all the issues that have been raised by the panelists here, as well as by several questions that I saw on the chat. We will certainly, and one statement that Maharaja Gat Singh, as the president of the association, of the Indian Heritage Hotels Association, made was that wild animals capturing and torturing and taming and training must come to a stop. So he is completely in agreement with what we are trying to do. However, he did say that we have to address the issue of livelihoods for those who are engaged in this work. And number two, what to do with all the so-called trained elephants which are in different camps and resettlement camps and so on. So I think, in a sense, the task in front of this task force is very well laid out. We have to devise a code of conduct. We have to ensure that whatever laws there are in the country pertaining to that are implemented. We also have to look at certification, that whatever is happening as per the required legal norms. And of course, two very new ideas that were given to us by Latika today. One is to look at the insurance aspect. We will incorporate that into our objectives. And if I may, Anjuna, take just 2 minutes. We have one of our country's most well-known wildlife experts sitting amongst us, Dr. H.S. Pabla. And once again, I'm going to request Dr. Pabla to please engage with us on this task force. And Dr. Pabla, do you have anything to say on the matter? Would you just take a minute or so if you are there? Dr. Pabla, are you there?
Mr. Mathur, Dr. Pabla is here, but he cannot. Can we have him as a panelist? I don't think you can hear him.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
All right.
But we have his comments and his support through our chat box.
Hmm.
Mr. Pablo, you can.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes.
Yes,
Oh, yes.
we can. Yeah.
Hi,
Yeah,
good
Dr.
afternoon,
Pabla.
everybody. Actually, I've been waiting to say a few words, but probably you didn't notice my hand.
No, but I noticed your name, Dr.
Oh,
Pabla, and that's why I
Okay, so great to be
go for it.
here. And Karthik, it was a wonderful presentation, and the interaction has been so wonderful so far. I just want to kind of bring a few points to the notice of everybody. I have slightly different take on the issue. One, that when people keep animals, it's not really all cruelty as sometimes we all seem to think. I come from a rural background, and animals are as much a part of any family as the children of any family. And we have had elephants all my service life, and our Mahals are so attached to these elephants which we have. The hereditary family is doing it, and I remember even one of our drivers in Kanha, he wants to be the Mahout again because his family, his background is from Mahout's heritage. I think it's very important to highlight the cruelty part of keeping these animals, and we must strengthen our law and law enforcement so that wherever we have cruelty, we should be able to find out, dig it out, and stamp it. And the travel industry which uses these elephants, I think it's not a big deal. Very few, maybe 100 or 200 elephants are involved in these places, Jaipur, Udaipur, Jodhpur. And if the travel houses or the hotels who use these elephants, if they can tie up with them and use only those ones which are certified to be using humane treatment of elephants, I think we can easily do it. That's one. Second part, elephants are legally slightly different from wild elephants. In the Wildlife Protection Act, no Schedule 1 animal can be transferred from one person to another, neither sold nor free, but only elephants can. Other animals can only be inherited. You can give it away to anybody, an animal or a trophy, only when you die. You have to die if you want to give something to somebody else. But elephants can still be transacted, they can be over, and elephants are actually livestock. In UP, Bihar, Assam, there were thousands of elephants are kept. So I think they are not going to go away even if we stop riding. Elephants are going to be there. That's one. And we must make sure that they are humanely treated, and whatever we can do, either strengthen the law or the law enforcement or bring in NGOs who can go around and find out who's not keeping the elephants well and deal with them whenever we cover that. Second part is elephants now in India are going to be surplus in the forest very soon. We already have a huge problem with wild elephants. More than 500 people are killed every year by elephant. More than, all the other animals put together do not kill as many people as elephants. And elephants are migrating into areas which have no experience and no exposure to having wild animals. Madhya Pradesh, we never had elephants for the last 200 years or so. Then sometime in the 90s, they started coming into Madhya Pradesh. Then Madhya Pradesh split up into Chhattisgarh. Then they crossed Chhattisgarh, came into Madhya Pradesh again. When they were coming in singles and doubles, we used to capture them and train them, although we would not like that to be happening. But we did that. But now they are coming in hundreds, not hundreds, maybe 50 are in Bandhavgarh now, and several others are roaming the countryside. So we have to sometimes capture them, Mathur Sahab, and use them. And if you do not use these elephants, they are going to live a much more miserable life than they are living when they are used. So
Thank you, Dr. Pavla.
yeah. So
Yeah,
elephants-
that's the reason that's the reason we have you as an expert on our working group. So
thank
we
you.
need all these learnings to, yeah.
So I think
Right.
we have to create a system where whenever elephants have to come out of the forest, they are taken care properly, not only as a liability, because if they become a liability, I strongly believe in the dictum, if you don't use something, you lose it. So I think the only way you can use elephants is in tourism, because they no longer used by forest department in dragging timber and other things. So how best we can use them, they continue to be valuable. People want to spend their attention and money and resources on maintaining these elephants properly. That we must ensure. But I think totally try to ban the keeping of elephants by the people. And that is, I think, going to be counterproductive in the long run. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Mr.
Dr.
Mathur, we
Pavla,
also
so
have, Mr. Mathur, we also
can
have
I
another
finish?
voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So, Dr. Pavla and everybody else, it is to address all these issues that we have constituted this task force. And I may just say that I think the key here is drawing the line between using them for tourism and capturing them and torturing them and mistreating them and hurting them and injuring them and then taming them. I think this is where we have to focus our attention. So as far as the code of conduct, law, implementation, certification, all these issues will be brought to the fore by this task force that is being set up. And we will draw upon Dr. Pavla's insight and knowledge of that. Having said this, I would also now, I think Mandy has already announced it. I don't need to re-announce it. We have drawn up a memorandum of understanding with Wildlife SOS that we are going to work together towards this common goal. I did see a question somewhere which spoke about horses and so all being used in tourism. I just want to add that wildlife is distinct from domesticated animal life, and domesticated animals is a separate issue. There are bad practices there too, but those will be tackled separately. The key here is capturing of wildlife and mistreating them and torturing them. So having said this, I would like to announce the MOU that we will sign and we will work together. And so Karthik, you have RTSOI, your partner in this campaign. Thank you so much. Anjana, please take over.
Thank you, Mr. Mathur.
We can do a cyber. Can we do a
shake hand.
cyber handshake? Okay. Thank you. All right.
Thank you, RTSI. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for having me on this panel and this discussion. And thank you for the MOU. I think it will be really a very visionary thing to move forward with helping to promote responsible tourism and keeping wild animals where they belong and safe. And I'd like to take just 1 minute very quickly to respond to Pavla sir. You know, I deeply admire Mr. H.S. Pavla, and I've known him as the Chief Wildlife Warden and the PCCF when he was in Madhya Pradesh. Wildlife SOS runs a sloth bear rescue and rehabilitation center in Madhya Pradesh. And we have worked under Mr. Pavla's guidance extensively for several years. So I completely agree with what he's saying, that elephants in the forest that are in the custody of the forest department certainly don't have the kind of a bad deal that elephants in cities like Jaipur, etc. have. And they have they're used for patrolling, and they have employees that are permanent. So the forest department has mahouts that are employed permanently, and the mahout has no other work. All he has to do is take care of his elephant. And so he does not have to go and earn extra tips from tourists, etc. All he has to do is care for the elephants. And I think, that makes it so much easier on the elephants and on the people. So they don't have any additional pressures. But thank you for bringing those important points in, Pabla Saab. We are looking at ensuring that we are not talking about ownership. We are not talking about any of those issues. We are just talking about RTSY creating awareness in partnership with Wildlife SOS for making responsible tourism, a household name across India. That's our goal.
Perfectly all right.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Karthik. Thank you, Mr.
One
Mathur.
sec, Arjun,
Mandy?
Anjuna. I just want to say that I know that most of us must feel we can continue this wonderful conversation. And I hope you don't go away with the feeling that it's got truncated. And if that be the case, I hope you will not say tisk, tisk. Now that was my 2 bits of my fun. So with that,
I know, Mandy, you want all your quips in there. I know that.
Yeah. But may I invite Mr. Niranjan Khatri? He's been waiting in the chat room to have his last word with us. So as a last word to today's conversation and discussions.
Thank you,
Shobha, if you can put
as
Mr.
a founding member.
As a founding member RTSOI.
Yes.
Thank you, Anjana. And it's a pleasure to hear all panelists. Karthik, I learned a lot from you today. Your presentation was eye-opening. And I was very happy to hear Mr. Pabla also to give a contrarian view about how to take good care of elephants. I would like to red flag another important issue, and that perhaps calls for another webinar on man-animal conflict and how we ensure that this is reduced. We kill a large number of animals because of our irresponsible driving behavior in the forest, and that needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Sure, Niranjan. We will definitely take up that as an issue. And Steve Borgia, who's another one of our, who's the immediate past president, has done a seminar or 2 in the subject. We will definitely look at this. Thank you, Niranjan.
The escalation of poaching, habitat loss, human-animal conflict, mistreatment in captivity are just some of the threats to all the wild animals. Working towards better protection of elephants, improving enforcement policies to prevent the illegal poaching, etc., etc. There are multiple issues, many goals that need tackling. We begin with step 1. And step 1 is being responsible for elephants in tourism. We understand the abuse needs to stop and we need a new way of looking after our elephants who cannot be sent back to jungles. The whole emphasis is on caring for them and stopping abuse. We need to find a middle path where the abuse stops and the caring starts. That is truly responsible tourism. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us. This webinar came to you from Responsible Tourism Society of India, which was formerly known as Eco-Tourism Society of India. We are a non-profit organization with an aim to promote and ensure responsible and sustainable practices in tourism industry. We aspire to become a single point resource and skilling center for sustainability issues for all tourism industry. We are a guidelines, standards, certification body for tourism industry. And we are a harbinger of the idea of responsible traveler, as responsible tourism is our being of the planet and our own selves. Join us for many such issues. You may write to me at anjunadheer@rtsoi.org. Please write .org. With this, I thank you all for joining us today. And this conversation, this discussion will carry on further. You know that we have a working group and many other things. So thank you very much. Happy Janmashtami. Have a nice day.
Bye-bye all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Karthik. Thank you, Mandy. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mohan, Niranjan, Dr. Pabla, Latika. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, lovely.
Thank you.
It was a
Bye-bye.
pleasure to be here.
Lovely and Shobha, thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Great. Bye, Anjuna. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.